There is a viral image of the perfect ghost town that circulates online. It tells the story of cities abandoned so rapidly that dinner was left cooling on the dining tables, and clothes still hang in the bedroom closets. We see it in the high-contrast photos of toys sitting in dust-covered hospital wards, or mathematical equations left untouched on a high school blackboard for 50 years. These images suggest that a community can simply vanish without warning, as if the ground opened up and erased several thousand people in a single afternoon. While these stories of overnight evaporation capture our imagination, the historical reality is documented and traceable. The truth is rarely a mystery, but it is often much bleaker. Examining how a city actually dies moves us away from paranormal speculation and toward the specific pressures that can end a community's future. The first category of ghost towns consists of settlements built around a single, finite resource. These are the coal outposts of Alberta and the diamond mining towns rising out of the shifting Namibian sand dunes. They operate on the mechanics of a boom and bust cycle. When a coal seam runs dry or a railway company reroutes its tracks, the town's only reason for existing disappears in a matter of weeks. The weathered wooden buildings and empty dirt roads look like the site of a sudden flight. But the heavy oak furniture and cast iron stoves left in these homes weren't abandoned in a panic. Hauling a heavy table simply cost more than the object was worth. These towns didn't vanish. They underwent a slow, calculated exit as the last few residents realized the economy was never coming back. Other towns are consumed by their environment, where the land itself becomes too hostile for human habitation. Looking at a town suffocated by ash, it's easy to imagine a single moment of catastrophe. In reality, disasters like the Plymouth eruption involved pulses of volcanic activity over several years. Residents faced months of uncertainty, making agonizing daily choices. Man-made disasters follow a similar, agonizingly slow timeline. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, an underground coal fire began burning beneath the town in the 1960s. Eventually, the fire forced massive fissures through the buckled asphalt, venting toxic gases into the streets. This wasn't an overnight evacuation. It was a bureaucratic process that took decades, involving legal battles, government buyouts, and a gradual, reluctant exodus. Even in the face of literal fire and ash, cities empty out through a series of painful human concessions to nature. Then there are the thriving cities emptied by military conflict and international treaties. This hillside of stone houses in Kayako was once a vibrant Greek village. After a massive population exchange dictated by treaty, thousands were marched out of their homes. They left their schools and churches intact, but the infrastructure was suddenly devoid of people. In Varosha, red Forbidden Zone signs mark a luxury resort sealed off in the 1970s. Treaties explain why it closed, but they ignore the confusion of civilians who walked away, hoping to return, only to find the gates locked for 50 years. Every ghost town on the map has a documented cause in the archives, a paper trail that definitively disproves the idea of an unexplained disappearance. If we have the economic and political records to explain these ruins, why does the legend of the half-eaten meal continue to fascinate us? We are drawn to the physical remains of collapse, a phenomenon often described as dark tourism. We have an urge to see the limits of our own endurance. As archaeologists have noted, abandoned things can generate disturbing stories and intense recollections. Historical records capture policy and economics, but they cannot capture the unrecorded emotional moment when a family locks their front door for the last time. We create these myths of people frozen in time to fill the silence left by the official paperwork. We project our own anxieties onto the objects they left behind. Ghost towns haunt us because they are monuments to the fact that our own routines depend on stability. When the economy, the land, or a political border shifts, we are left with empty rooms, reminders that the life we consider normal is subject to pressures we cannot always control.
There is a specific unease that comes with stepping into a room where a life appears to have been paused mid-sentence. Plates wait on the table, clothes hang on the wall, a bed remains unmade. In Coleman's Cop, Namibia, an early 20th century diamond boom town sits empty in the Namib Desert. The encroaching sand swallows the room's waist deep, preserving the exact geometry of the domestic spaces while burying the history of the families who decided the harsh conditions were no longer worth the payout. A continent away, the cold decay of Pripyat carries a similar weight. Evacuated in the wake of the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, residents were told their departure was temporary. Today, school cafeterias still hold serving trays, and classrooms remain scattered with toys and open books. When official town records fall silent, our brains struggle to process the vacuum of information. Instead of imagining the tedious logistics of a town failing, we invent supernatural horrors, urban myths, and found footage nightmares. Grounded, but the true significance of these empty spaces relies entirely on the physical evidence of an ordinary human routine, halted permanently. You have likely heard the persistent legends about ghost towns, entire communities dropping their tools, abandoning half-eaten meals, and fleeing into the night in a sudden, unexplained panic. The factual reality usually involves a heavy paper trail. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, an underground coal seam fire burned beneath the streets. The town emptied out over decades through a slow grind of legal battles, government buyouts, and political attrition. Even though the decline was drawn out, the myth of the overnight exodus persists because it reflects a core emotional truth. Leaving a plate in the sink or a bicycle in the yard represents the specific, agonizing moment a family finally accepts that the risk of staying outweighs the value of the things they are leaving behind. Government records track the economic decline, and treaties map out the border changes. It is the discarded material remains that capture the grief and confusion of locking a front door for the final time. Archaeologists have a specific term for allowing these physical objects to speak. They call it manifestation, and they use it as a direct alternative to traditional historical narration. In fact, some academics argue that our modern overabundance of historical information is actually a liability. Producing too many narratives and details risks saturating our memory, which can eventually neutralize and trivialize the traumatic weight of the past. We see exactly how this works at a World War II site near Mankush in western Ethiopia. Italian troops occupied the camp to defend the frontier, but the base played such a minor role that it is entirely absent from many official military maps. Instead of a written history, we are left with the thingliness of the site. Rusted food cans, bayonet scabbards, and the stripped frame of a Ford automobile sit rotting in the dirt. Or consider a clandestine detention center operated during the military dictatorship in Argentina. Archaeologists found a single ping-pong ball there. For the blindfolded prisoners, the constant, rhythmic sound of their executioners playing a game became a severe psychological torment. The object itself manifests the sheer banality of that cruelty. You can analyze volumes of Benito Mussolini's fierce fascist rhetoric, but the ideology cracks when placed next to the banal, discarded waste his troops left behind in the middle of nowhere. In our current era of supermodernity, we do not always need another detailed explanation. Sometimes we need the raw revelation of truth that words simply fail to reach, which forces us to confront how we treat these abandoned spaces today. Are they evidence of human history or consumer spectacles? In Varosha, Cyprus, military conflict in 1974 forced Greek-speaking residents to flee their homes and hotels. The area was subsequently sealed off, holding their private memories hostage in a decaying forbidden zone. Today, parts of the town have been controversially reopened for dark tourism. Visitors casually pedal rented bicycles past ruined homes, engaging in a light-hearted activity that academics identify as a direct form of heritage violence. This map illustrates how smooth, sterile tourist paths are quite literally paving over the microgeography of the original town. The installation of modern direction signs and wooden stanchions actively obstructs visitors from confronting the actual trauma of the displaced population. Compare that extraction of trauma to the revival happening in Cerro Gordo, a remote, abandoned silver mining town high in the California desert. Rather than turning the decay into a sanitized theme park, its current resident physically engages with the ruins to preserve them.
By digging into the earth and refining leftover copper and zinc ores down into usable brass, he maintains a respectful, tangible dialogue with the town's original material culture. These ghost towns serve as three-dimensional archives of humanity. Long after the official documents fade, the rusted cars, the buried kitchens, and the forgotten toys are the only things that continue to tell the truth.